And you should be happy with this right in the future. Right? That's the whole point.
Okay, I think we're ready to get started. So I'll be turning it over first to Damien for some questions.
Okay, so here's a couple pretty good questions that might answer a lot of the questions you already submitted. So the first question here is asking if we've applied for grants for repairs. And yes, we have. We've applied for a grant to create a second water source, which is one of the violations of the state and is obviously necessary to keep the water storage up to par. As well as another grant we've applied for storm recovery after the January storms. The response for those grants has not been received yet, so we're just hoping for the best. It's not very common for a for-profit water company to receive grant money. Second question here is, are low-interest loans available from the state or federal governments? We don't qualify for the low-interest FEMA loans for whatever reason. I really don't know why, but that's just something that we're not eligible for. Another question here is asking if we have other methods for raising money, specifically asking about timber sales. We are currently, by the way the PUC set up our rates, giving credits on your bill back to you when we timber harvest, instead of using that money for infrastructure, repairs, or upgrades. So I believe that's a broken method, to be frank, but I don't make those decisions. So we'll move on to another question here, asking if we were to, for example, sell a large portion of property, say one of the big parcels, would the affect the profitability towards the customers, I believe is how this is worded. But that is something that the customers would be getting a kickback for. If we do sell a large portion of land or the company in itself, there are some entitlements that the customers have. And those numbers obviously could be specified more by Wilson. He would know, or the PUC department that deals with that. And then there's another question here asking about the temporary rate increase, which was the Safe Drinking Water Bond Act loan back in the 90s, which does expire at some point. We will be paying that off, I believe it's the 2026 or 7. And then another question here is asking about this rate increase, whether it will be permanent or temporary, like the Safe Drinking Water Bond Act loan. This is a request for a a permanent rate increase to have operational capital to continue to operate and not operate at a loss. There's several other here, but I'll leave time for some other people's questions, but I wanted to address some of these because they were very relevant. I thought a lot of people would have some similar questions to that. So.
Thank you, Damien. So I'll be going down through the questions. There's going to be a fair amount of overlap, so I might skip a few that I think.
Can you speak after
Sorry. Okay. So I'll be going over the question stack that I have right now. There may be questions that are that have been repeats of others, so I may skip through some. Yes. So in the interest of time. Okay, so the first question is, how is the money being used? And so I think the clarification on that is it's not used because the rate increase whatever rate increase hasn't been, hasn't been a resolution, hasn't been voted on. So this is more about how will the money be used, and I think if you'd like to explain yourself further, or I think.
First of all, it's an increase in the rates, so we're not getting money all the time. We're getting a little bit each month, depending on how many people we're is we bill every other month. So one month we're going to get X amount, one month X. And it gives us money coming in so that we're operational. If a problem comes up, we can fix it. An awful lot of the time, we just simply don't have enough money to even fix the basic stuff. And the only way we can do it is for Damien and I to go out and do it alone, which really is illegal. We're not supposed to be digging in a hole and getting in a hole in the middle of a road with just the two of us without having people flagging for us or anything like that. But we've been doing what isn't allowed in order to maybe be able to get things done. I think that's the only way I can answer that one.
Excuse me.
Can we give them some